Hello, this is Dr. Sailesh Rao. I'm an electrical engineer, system specialist. I was working on the internet for 20 years after graduation, and for the last 12 years, I've been working on the environment. So I have a nonprofit called Climate Healers, where we work on how to reverse climate change.
You also worked with Al Gore. Can you tell us briefly about that?
Yes, Al Gore was the one who put me on this path. I saw his presentation on TV and I was so shocked. I said, if half of what he's saying is true, I should be working on that full time. So I studied the problem. I realized it's far worse than what he's saying. And so I contacted him. I got trained by him in the second session. And I gave his presentation for about a year. And then I tried to talk him into talking about animal agriculture. And I was not very successful at that. So I spent about 3 years trying to persuade him to do that. And then finally I gave up and quit and started doing my own thing.
And your own thing involves climatehealers.org. You have a conference coming up in October in Phoenix where you're headquartered, where you're going to talk about creating a vegan world by 2026 by creating a whole new infrastructure. Can you start by telling us why you think this is such a big concept and how it relates to the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and even the invention of fire?
Yeah, well, the idea behind Vegan World 2026 is to create a complete change in our culture from a culture of normalized violence to a culture of normalized non-violence. And I believe this is the right time to do it for several reasons. I mean, the way in which our violence has been growing exponentially. So we are killing wild animals at a faster and faster pace. And if you look at just the statistics on wild vertebrates, we killed 52% between 1970 and 2010, and we killed 58% between 1970 and 2012. At that rate, by 2026, all of them will be gone. So this is our concept of year zero, and year zero is pushing us to do this transformation. So the idea behind Vegan World 2026 is to create a vegan world by 2026 in 8 years. And most people will be vegan by that time, okay? And I think the time is ripe for that. And it's exactly like what happened in the discovery of fire or the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution. In every one of those major changes, three things changed. We changed how we communicated, we changed how we harnessed energy, and we changed what we ate. So in the discovery of fire, we communicated with speech. That was the first time speech was invented. And then for energy, it was fire. And for food, it was cooking. So it opened up a lot more foods that were available to us now with cooking than before. Then in the agricultural revolution, for communication, it was writing. For energy, it was harnessing on animals for energy. And for food, it was growing our own crops. And in the industrial revolution, it was the printing press for communication. It was fossil fuels for energy. And for food, it was turning those poor animals who were helping us in the agricultural revolution into factory farmed animals for food. And now, in the Vegan World 2026 revolution that's happening now, for communication is the internet, a distributed version of the internet. So it allows each one of us to have the power to be our own sources for communication. And for energy, it is solar energy with the distributed DC grid technology. So it allows each one of us again to have control over our own energy sources and locally share it among our friends. And for food, it's veganism. And so with these three, you have a major shift that's happening in human society. And it allows us now to go into a new way of organizing that's more decentralized and distributed.
And you're creating a prototype, a template, a model for that new society that would crop up in small communities or co-ops in Costa Rica. Tell us about that.
So we are creating this community in Costa Rica at the edge of the Guanacaste province, which is the province that used to have a lot of biodiversity, but that's slowly being eaten up by cattle ranches. So we have found a place there, about 100 acres of land that has the original forests returned. And so from there, we are going to try and grow this. And the community is a place where we implement this new culture of normalized nonviolence. So how do we grow food there? How do we live there? How do we measure our own ecological footprint and make sure that if all 7.5 billion of us try to live like that, we won't use up more than half the earth. So it is an example, a prototype of the new society, so to speak.
And you would get this new society going by interesting people, not necessarily in veganism. That might happen as a side effect of the new society, in getting them interested in a new decentralized form of societal interaction with something called holochain. Can you explain that?
So holochain is a way to turn the internet back to what it was originally intended to be. Originally, internet was intended to empower each one of us so that we can communicate with each other and become the source for our own, story, so to speak. And slowly it became, co-opted by large businesses, and so they now store all the data, all our data for us, and they basically control what we see and what we hear. So what Holochain allows is, it's like a combination of blockchain and BitTorrent. So it has the cryptographic individual privacy that you get through cryptography that blockchain allows, and it also has the ledger technology that blockchain has, but it also has a distributed database technology that BitTorrent has. So this fundamentally decentralizes the internet, and it also allows individual privacy to be automatically built into our apps. And if all our apps are then open source, then it will have institutional transparency as well built in. So Holochain to me is one of the key technologies that allow the internet to be what it really should be.
Now, there's actually a new currency that you have not officially named yet that would be a part of this and might draw people in the same way they were drawn into Ethereum and all the other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so we've been talking about building a cryptocurrency that is based on ecological footprint, where the currency is automatically given to people in their accounts. And it will be based again as an app on Holochain. And the idea behind this currency is that the ecological footprint is now distributed as an allowance to people. And then when people use that for, say, a product that they want to buy, then that the ecological footprint of that product gets retired from their account. So this way you basically track the ecological footprint of humanity and guarantee that if all 7.5 billion of us live like that, you won't use up more than half the earth. So the other half can be returned back to wildlife. So this is based on the half-earth theory of Edward O. Wilson, who said if you allow half the earth to be returned back to wildlife, we can limit the extinction crisis to something that's manageable.
So those in the community in Costa Rica, in this template community, would be using this holochain currency. And as part of that holochain currency, how does veganism and cruelty-free fit into it?
Yeah, well, the people in the community would be using this currency as a way to measure their own ecological footprint. And essentially in the community, we are living as you would live in the new system. So in the new system, it is based on normalized nonviolence. This is why veganism is foundational to the new system, because you cannot have a violent food system in a normalized nonviolent culture. So when people join this new community, they automatically are going to be exposed to just vegan foods only, or vegan ways of living. And everything you do would be non-toxic. So you'll have non-toxic products and processes. We'll have to change all our stories. Our stories are full of violence right now. So you have to change our stories to be full of, to be non-violent. So it's a complete shift in how we think, how we, and basically the infrastructure of this new society is such that if people live ordinary lives in this new society, the planet should thrive. In the current system, people live ordinary lives and the planet is dying. So we know that there is something wrong with the system itself.
So this new model society that would start in Costa Rica based on nonviolence, decentralization, institutional transparency, and individual privacy has a number of people who are in support of it. You said you have 17 partners, including universities and people who are funders and investors, interested people. It would start with purchasing the property in Costa Rica for something to the effect of $875,000, which is not a huge sum for the 100 acres or so that you're talking about.
Right.
So let's say you get the community up and running there, and you get this new currency and this new societal procedure going based on nonviolence and this new kind of commerce. How would that spread? Let's say, just off the top of my head, I'm a member of a co-op in Santa Monica, a food co-op. Would it be like a new co-op that could sprout up in Santa Monica, imitating or being based on the first one?
Yeah, I mean, you would expect people to take all the infrastructure the software infrastructure that we have created and use that. So basically, a few foundational rules have to be followed, but other than that, everything else is open to the community in that local area, how to adapt it. So I expect this to be much more a diverse, decentralized flowering of communities. And with the basic idea that we are going to live in a way that is compatible with the planet.
So, as it grows, what you see in terms of hitting a vegan world by 2026 would be these communities would flower and crop up one after the other, and they could be interconnected in some way. You had mentioned that they could have decentralized apps that would mimic Airbnb and Uber and Lyft and even Amazon and Netflix and various other platforms. But could they interconnect? Because I can't see somebody creating high quality programming for just a village in Costa Rica.
Yeah. I mean, it'll all be interconnected, but interconnected in a way that the data is distributed. So you really don't need huge server farms, so to speak. So everyone is keeping the data in their own local resources, so to speak. So it's distributed around, just like BitTorrent is distributed, right? So this way you build distributed apps that don't have a central authority that monitors what you're doing and concentrates
and censors
you and concentrates power, so to speak. I mean, we cannot concentrate power in a decentralized system. So
now you have said to those who say, wow, you're going to do all this by 2026, that's a tall order, but you were involved in the development of the internet. So tell us about your role as somebody who has a doctorate from Stanford University and how you apply how the internet grew to this issue.
Yeah, in fact, I was in a very similar situation in the internet as well. I was a systems specialist and I was working with the Ethernet committee at that time in 1995. And the chairman of the committee came to me and said, can you take a look at our 100 megabit Ethernet standard and tell us what we should be changing because the products are not working too well in the field. And so I took a look at the standard and I came to the next meeting in 1996, January, and I told them that the standard has some foundational flaws, in terms of the length of some scramblers and things like that. So anyway, some technical issues with it, but I can actually do a gigabit on that cable. I can do 10 times faster rate, and I can make it so robust that when it falls back to 100, it'll be robust. And people laughed at me. They said, are you crazy? Dream on. I mean, we can't get 100 to work. You're talking about doing 1,000 on that? We'll believe it when we see it. The exact words he said to me. We'll believe it when we see it. But he was kind enough to let me play. So we formed a committee to look into the problem, and we had this new technology, digital ways of doing things that people were doing in analog before. So it was a transition from one to another, from analog to digital. And when we did that, we had the standard done by 1999, and by 2003, we were deploying 150 million units per year. So literally, it blew up, and the internet just took off because it had a robust backbone. So the same thing we are trying to do here. You go from a culture of normalized violence, which is clearly unsustainable. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And you have to now create something that's a culture of normalized non-violence. So this is like going from analog to digital. It's a different way of organizing ourselves, different way of living, so to speak.
So how can people get involved? Tell us about your conference in Phoenix, October 26th through 28th, and also, even before that, a trip in July to Costa Rica.
Yeah, so we are organizing a conference in conjunction with ASU, Arizona State University, in Phoenix, October 26th to 28th, to talk about the Vegan World 2026 and to come up with milestones as to what needs to happen every year and look at all of the transitions that need to happen, going from a culture of normalized violence to a culture of normalized nonviolence. So there's a list of 40 things that we have identified as changes that need to happen. And I'm sure there are going to be more because the conference is going to be a very participatory conference. We're going to break out in groups and go and discuss different problems and then come back and come up with timelines as to how we're going to achieve each one of those. So at the end of that conference, we need to all have action plans as to what we are going to do when we go back. And then the trip to Costa Rica that we are organizing July 20th through 23rd is for potential investors in this project in Costa Rica, the Sacred Lifeline project. I call this an experiential education and research community that we are building, where people are going to try these ideas that we come up with in the conference and see what works, what doesn't work. It's like a place where it's a laboratory where you have to go try things out. And over time, we are going to refine these things out and so that we know what works and what doesn't. So we have 17 partners who are partnering with us on this project. We have University of Iowa, University of Illinois, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. So these are educational institutions. We have architects, we have organic farmers, and and some local people as well from Costa Rica. So the goal is to create a community that works together and irons out all the kinks in this as we go along.
I think this is absolutely fascinating. We could talk all day about the political system that you envision for elections and more details on the currency and how the currency would work. But before you go, just outline a little bit about this currency in layman's terms. If people, let's say, join this community, mm-hmm. I understand they get an allowance that they get to spend. How does that work?
So the idea is it's like a basic minimum income. So everyone gets a coin in their account. New coin shows up in their account, say every hour. And so each coin then entitles them to 1 square meter of the Earth's surface productivity for 1 year. So that's the kind of accounting you do, and when we do that, if it's 1 per hour and 7.5 billion people get that, you won't use up half the Earth. You'll use up less than half the Earth. So that allows another 10-20% of the coins to be allocated for administrative purposes. So it's a way to basically build in a system where everyone feels that they are being treated fairly by the system and they are allowed to live productive lives so that they can contribute.
Now, could they have an alternate economy? Let's say somebody's wealthy and they want to keep the money that they have in the bank. Mm-hmm. Can they still join this community?
They can still join the community, but over time, they can come in with the resources that they have and say, I want to use it for the new community, for building the new system. But over time, that old system is going to break down because the system is designed for just artificial growth, and it's behaving like a cancer on the planet. So it is going to disappear over time. So at that point, it's going to all become part of this new system.
Right, but I mean, hypothetically, if people today want to get involved and they don't want to take a vow, let's say, of poverty, mm-hmm. could they say, I'm going to join this community? Would they have to put any amount down to join? Is there a membership fee?
We haven't worked out all the details. We are trying to get the purchase of this land done first. But we are thinking more like a membership. So you come in and you join with a certain minimum amount, and then you can come and live there like a timeshare. But you come and live there for a month per year, something like that. So you can experience it. Or you want to come and live there permanently, it will cost a little bit more. So we haven't worked out all the details of this. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that there should be half the community should be permanent, that who are there, who form the base for the community, and the other half should be people who come in and out, who experience it, who work on research projects. So they come from different universities, they try different things, because you have to solve all kinds of, you have to address all kinds of issues, anthropological issues, sociological issues, technological issues, how do you do medicine? How do you do storytelling? Everything has to change.
Wow, fascinating. I only hope that when it gets underway, and I'm convinced that you will make it happen, that there's some cameras recording it all. It sounds like it would be a fascinating television show.
Thank you. Yes, I hope so. It's a documentation of how humanity's transition, so to speak.
And evolution.
And evolution, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sailesh Rao. You were instrumental in the rise of the internet, and now you are going to be instrumental in the next phase of human evolution, which will result in a vegan world by 2026. Game on!
Game on. Thanks to all of you.